Avery, your age is slipping away. When are you getting married? My mother's voice came through the phone and my hand tightened around my coffee cup. I sat alone in the office lounge during lunch break, and this call came at precisely the worst time, when I was most vulnerable. Mom, I'm focused on my career right now, I said, but my voice lacked the firmness I needed. Mom released that familiar sigh that always accompanied this conversation. Son, all your college friends have settled down. Only you remain. Mom, please. Not now. I interrupted, trying to end this conversation before it spiraled out of control. Your father wants to speak with you. Come home tomorrow. No excuses. The call ended abruptly. I threw my phone onto the table and covered my face with my hands. A presentation was scheduled for tomorrow. Project deadlines were pending. And now this family drama. My best friend Marcus approached and tapped my shoulder. Bro, all good? Yeah. I gave him a fake smile. Everything's perfect. But the reality was that nothing was perfect at all. The next morning when I arrived home, the living room had been arranged like some formal meeting venue. My mother, father, and 3 aunties I'd never seen before, all staring at me as if I were some prized exhibit. Mom said with an excited smile, "This is our son Avery, Harvard graduate, works at a top company." One auntie scanned me from head to toe as if I were a product on display. "Wonderful. He looks quite smart. He'd be a perfect match for my daughter." Wait, daughter? I looked at Mom with confusion, but she deliberately avoided my gaze. Dad folded his newspaper and spoke formally. "Avery, this is Mrs. Chen. Her daughter is a medical student. We thought you and she would make an excellent match." My throat tightened. My heart began racing. These people had already decided, without even asking me? I'm gay. I suddenly blurted out, and these words escaped my mouth like some automatic defense mechanism had activated. Complete silence. The aunties' cups froze in their hands. Mom's face turned white first, then red. Dad straightened his posture and looked at me as if he were seeing a stranger. "What did you just say?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm gay," I repeated, this time slightly louder, trying to sound confident even though my entire body was trembling. "I'm not interested in women. I like men." The aunties exchanged glances with each other and then quietly excused themselves without saying anything. The sound of the door closing echoed throughout the house. Mom covered her face and Dad stared at me as if I were his greatest disappointment. The silence stretched unbearably. I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, each second feeling like an eternity. My palms were sweating, and I desperately wished I could take back those words. Rewind time, find a different escape route. But it was too late now. Mom finally lowered her hands from her face. Her eyes were red, but no tears fell. She was too controlled for that. "Avery," she said slowly, each word measured and deliberate. "Do you understand what you're saying? Do you comprehend the implication?" "I understand," I lied, because honestly I hadn't thought this through at all. It had been pure panic, a desperate attempt to avoid being matched with some stranger's daughter. Dad stood up, his newspaper falling to the floor, forgotten. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. His classic pose when dealing with serious matters. 26 years, he said quietly. 26 years we've raised you. Supported every decision, funded your education, never questioned your choices. And this is what you tell us? The guilt crashed over me like a tidal wave. "Dad, I didn't plan to what?" He turned sharply. "Didn't plan to be honest with us? Didn't plan to trust us with the truth? That's not what I meant," I stammered, digging myself deeper into this hole. Mom stood up, smoothing her dress with shaking hands. "We need time to process this," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "But Avery, you need to understand something. This doesn't change our expectations. Marriage is still expected. Family legacy still matters. Social standing still counts." I stared at her, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she looked directly at me, "that we'll find a way forward, together, as a family." That should have comforted me. Instead, it sent chills down my spine. Because when Mom used that tone, calm, controlled, determined, it meant she had already formulated a plan. Dad turned back from the window. "Give us 24 hours," he said. "We'll discuss this tomorrow evening." Until then, go back to work. Act normal. Tell no one about this conversation. But 24 hours, Avery, Mom repeated firmly. That's all we're asking. I left the house in a daze, the bright afternoon sunlight feeling harsh and unforgiving. What had I done? What kind of mess had I created with one impulsive lie? Back at the office, I couldn't concentrate. Marcus noticed immediately. You look like you've seen a ghost, man. What happened at home? Family stuff, I muttered, pretending to review spreadsheets on my computer screen. Nothing I can't handle. Need to grab drinks after work? Talk it out? Not today, I said. Maybe later this week. He nodded, unconvinced but respectful of boundaries. Offer stands whenever you need it. That evening, I sat in my apartment, a small but comfortable space I'd rented after landing my job. The walls suddenly felt too close, the silence too loud. I made dinner mechanically, barely tasting the pasta I'd cooked. My phone sat on the counter, silent and accusing. What would tomorrow bring? Would my parents disown me? Would they demand I see a therapist? Would they try to convince me this was just a phase? I hadn't expected acceptance, not immediately anyway, but that strange calmness from Mom worried me more than yelling would have. Around midnight, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through social media, former classmates posting wedding photos, baby announcements, anniversary celebrations, everyone moving through life's expected milestones while I sat here, trapped in a lie of my own making. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. Short. Direct. Ominous. I set an alarm knowing I wouldn't sleep much anyway. The ceiling fan rotated slowly above me, creating shifting shadows in the darkness. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor was watching television. Muffled laughter from a comedy show drifted through the walls. Tomorrow I'd face the consequences of today's desperate decision. Tomorrow I'd learn what my parents had planned during their 24 hours of processing. Tomorrow my carefully constructed, predictable life would change forever. I just didn't realize how dramatically. What exactly are you telling us, Avery? Dad's voice bounced off the living room walls. I stood there, suddenly realizing the magnitude of what I'd done. This was merely a desperate lie to escape marriage pressure, but now it had become truth, at least in their eyes. I'm telling you the truth, Dad, I said, even though everything inside me was churning with anxiety. Mom wiped her eyes and looked at me. All right, she said in a slow voice. And this frightened me more because Mom's calmness always signaled an approaching storm. If this is your reality, then we'll accept it. I exhaled. Relief? Maybe for a second. However, she continued, and that word sent a chill down my spine. Even if you're gay, marriage remains necessary. Family name, society, tradition. Everything still matters. Wait, what? Mom, that means arranged marriage, Dad declared, standing up. If you're comfortable with men, then we've already found a suitable match for you. My mind went blank. How was this possible? So quickly, Mom pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. There was a photo, blurry, only a back view visible, face completely unclear. This is Harrison. He's from a respectable family. Quiet nature, stable job, and personality-wise, very good. Personality? I asked cautiously. But what does he look like? Mom pulled the phone back. Looks don't matter, Avery. Character is important. Which meant ugly. My parents were diplomatically telling me he wasn't attractive. Dad crossed his arms. Tomorrow night we've arranged dinner. You two can meet. You yourself said you're gay, so what's the problem now? The problem was that I wasn't actually gay. I told this lie just to avoid marriage. And now this lie had become my biggest problem. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Mom talked about wedding timelines. Dad discussed financial arrangements. And I sat there numbly nodding, trapped in a nightmare of my own creation. When I finally escaped back to my apartment, I collapsed on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The magnitude of the situation kept growing. I'd have to meet this Harrison person. Pretend to be interested. Maintain this elaborate charade. Unless I came clean right now. Admitted the lie. Faced the consequences. But what would those consequences be? Disappointment? Anger? Complete loss of trust. My parents had actually accepted my supposed sexuality. Revealing it as a lie would destroy whatever fragile bridge we'd just built. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message appeared. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Silver Oak Restaurant. Don't be late. Harris. My stomach twisted into knots. This was actually happening. There was no escape now. I spent the next day in a fog. At work I made mistakes in the presentation. Small ones, but enough that my supervisor pulled me aside afterward. Avery, is everything okay? You seem distracted. Personal matters, I said vaguely. I apologize. It won't happen again. Take the afternoon off if you need to, she offered. Mental health is important. I almost laughed. Mental health? Mine was currently spiraling toward a breakdown. But I stayed, burying myself in work, trying to ignore the approaching evening. Marcus brought coffee to my desk around 3. You look terrible, man. Seriously, what's going on? Remember that family stuff I mentioned? Yeah? It's gotten complicated. He sat on the edge of my desk. Want to elaborate? I almost told him, almost confessed the whole ridiculous situation. But the words stuck in my throat. Maybe after tonight. I'll know more then. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right. But I'm here when you need to talk. No judgment. Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. By 6 o'clock I was standing in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear to meet my supposed arranged marriage partner. What did one wear to such an absurd situation? Business casual seemed too formal. Jeans too casual. I finally settled on dark slacks and a button-down shirt, safe, neutral, forgettable. The drive to Silver Oak Restaurant took 20 minutes through evening traffic. I arrived early, of course. Anxious people always arrive early. The restaurant was upscale, dim lighting, soft jazz playing. The kind of place where important business deals and secret affairs happened in equal measure. The hostess led me to a corner table, somewhat secluded. Your companion will join you shortly, she said with a professional smile. I ordered water and waited. 7 o'clock came and went. 7:05. Still no Harrison. 7:10. I'd refilled my water glass 3 times already. Irritation began building. Is this Harrison late even for an arranged meeting? I thought. Maybe he was nervous too. Or maybe more honestly, maybe he was just as unhappy about this forced setup as I was. I checked my watch again. 7:15. Should I leave? Would that be rude? Would my parents find out? Then at 7:17 there was movement at the entrance. The maitre d' was greeting someone respectfully. I glanced over casually, and my breath caught in my throat. A man walked through the door, tall, easily over 6 feet. Broad shoulders, perfectly fitted in a charcoal suit that looked custom-tailored. Dark hair styled impeccably, and when he scanned the room, his sharp hazel eyes made direct contact with mine. No, this couldn't be Harrison. But he was walking straight toward my table with confident, purposeful strides. Avery? His voice was deep and controlled, with an underlying authority that made my spine straighten involuntarily. Why yeah, I said, standing up awkwardly. And you're Harrison? He extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, warm, professional, yet somehow personal. We both sat down. My mind was still processing. This was the not attractive guy my parents had hinted at. This man looked like he could be modeling for luxury watch advertisements. Apologies for the delay, he said casually, picking up the menu. Client meeting ran longer than expected. It's fine. No problem. I was trying to appear normal, but internally my heart was racing abnormally fast. He was so composed, so put together, so completely unlike anything I'd anticipated. The waiter appeared. Harrison ordered smoothly without studying the menu much. Clearly he was familiar with this place. I nervously ordered something random because honestly food was the last thing on my priority list at that moment. So, Harrison said, leaning back slightly, eyes focused directly on me, when did you tell your parents you were gay? I nearly choked on my water. Yesterday. Just yesterday. His eyebrow raised slightly. Yesterday? That's rather sudden, isn't it? And you? I deflected quickly. I came out when I was 17, he said calmly, fingers lightly drumming on the table. A small tell that maybe he wasn't as composed as he appeared. Took my parents about a year to fully accept it, but eventually they understood this wasn't going to change. Still, their condition was clear: family tradition must be maintained. Hence this arrangement. I nodded, pretending to relate, but the reality was that my entire narrative was fabricated. And Harrison? He was genuine, authentic, living his actual truth while I was drowning in lies. Dinner progressed at a measured pace. We discussed safe topics, careers, hobbies, city life. Harrison worked as a senior designer at an architecture firm. He was passionate about minimalist design, enjoyed reading thrillers and philosophy, appreciated good coffee but preferred it black. Black coffee is essentially bean-flavored water, I said during a lull in conversation. He smiled slightly, the first real break in his professional demeanor. And your sugar-laden version is basically dessert in a cup. Exactly. Much better, I countered. We'll have to disagree on that, he said, but there was amusement in his tone now, a warmth creeping into those hazel eyes. The food arrived. I'd apparently ordered salmon without realizing it. Harrison had chosen steak, medium rare. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then he set down his fork and looked at me directly. I need to be clear about something, Avery. This arrangement is transactional. I don't expect emotional entanglement. You shouldn't either. I met his gaze, those clear, honest, slightly guarded eyes. Understood. Same perspective here. Good. He nodded once decisively. We can maintain our separate lives. Officially married for family purposes. Privately independent. No complications. It sounded practical, logical, almost too perfect, but some tiny uncomfortable sensation stirred in my chest, though I couldn't identify what it was. What about living arrangements? I asked, trying to focus on logistics rather than that strange feeling. I'm thinking a 2-bedroom apartment, Harrison said, clearly having already considered this. Neutral location, neither too close to your family nor mine. We'd split expenses evenly, maintain separate schedules mostly, minimal interference in each other's personal lives. You've thought this through. I believe in planning ahead, he said simply. Reduces conflicts later. The waiter cleared our plates and offered dessert menus. We both declined. Harrison ordered coffee black. Naturally, I ordered tea just to be contrary. Can I ask you something? I ventured. Of course. Why agree to this arrangement? You're clearly successful. Independent. You could probably find someone naturally, without family pressure. Harrison was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because fighting my family on this would be exhausting and ultimately pointless. They'd never stop pushing. This way everyone gets what they want. They get their traditional marriage. I get my freedom. It's efficient. Efficient, I repeated. That's one way to view marriage. You don't agree? I don't know. I admitted honestly. I've never really thought about marriage much. Certainly never imagined it would happen like this. Few people do, Harrison said. But we adapt to circumstances, make the best of unexpected situations. Our drinks arrived. I wrapped my hands around the warm teacup, grateful for something to do with my nervous energy. What do your friends think? I asked. About this arrangement? I haven't told them, Harrison said. As far as they're concerned, I'm getting married to someone I met through family connections, which is technically true. They don't need to know the details. Same here, I said. My best friend knows something's up, but I haven't explained what. Probably wise to keep it simple. Harrison agreed. We sat in silence for a few moments. The restaurant had filled up around us. Couples on dates, business dinners, groups of friends celebrating. Normal people living normal lives while we sat here negotiating the terms of our practical arrangement. Do you have any deal breakers? Harrison asked suddenly. Things that would make this arrangement unworkable for you. I thought about it. Dishonesty, I suppose. If we're going to make this work, we need to be straightforward with each other, even if we can't be with anyone else. He nodded approvingly. Agreed. Anything else? Respect for boundaries. If you say you need space, I need to honor that, and vice versa. Fair. Harrison pulled out his phone. Should we exchange contact information? We'll need to coordinate logistics. I gave him my number. He typed it in efficiently, then sent me a text so I'd have his. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Next steps, Harrison said, back to business mode. My parents will want to arrange an engagement ceremony relatively soon, probably within 2 weeks. Then a wedding sometime in the next 2 to 3 months. Is that timeline workable for you? My head spun. That's very fast. We can push back if needed, he offered. But in my experience, prolonging these things just creates more stress. Better to get it done and move forward. He had a point. All right. 2 weeks for engagement, 3 months for the wedding. Good. He signaled for the check, which the waiter brought promptly. Harrison pulled out his card before I could even reach for my wallet. We should split that, I protested. Consider it my treat for our first meeting, he said. We'll split expenses going forward as discussed. The waiter processed the payment and returned with the receipt. Harrison signed it with a quick scrawl, then stood. I followed suit. Outside, the evening air was cool and crisp. City lights reflected off nearby buildings. Harrison's car was parked near the entrance. A sleek black sedan, exactly the type I'd expected him to drive. I'll be in touch about the engagement details, he said, pulling out his keys. My mother will probably want to meet with both of us and your parents together. Just warning you now, she can be intense. Noted, I said. My mother too. He smiled slightly. That same small break in his professional facade. This should be interesting then. That's one word for it. Harrison paused with his hand on the car door handle. Avery, I know this situation is unconventional, but I think we can make it work. We both seem like reasonable people who can communicate clearly. That's more than many actual couples have. True enough, I agreed. All right then. He opened the car door. I'll text you tomorrow about next steps. Have a good evening. You too. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing into city traffic. Then I stood there under the streetlights for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. I'd gone into this dinner expecting the worst. Some awkward, unattractive stranger that my parents had dug up out of desperation. Instead, I'd met Harrison, intelligent, articulate, successful, and frustratingly handsome. This should have made things easier. Instead, it complicated everything. Because maintaining emotional distance from someone I found genuinely interesting was going to be much harder than I'd anticipated. I walked to my car, got in and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. Got home safely. Sleep well. Such a simple, considerate message. Normal politeness. Nothing more. So why did it make my heart beat just a little bit faster? I started the car and drove home. Harrison's words echoing in my mind. We both seem like reasonable people who can communicate clearly. Reasonable. Logical. Practical. Everything about this arrangement made sense on paper. It was only my increasingly complicated feelings that didn't fit the plan. Avery, what do you think of this ring? My mother asked, placing an elegant diamond band before me on the velvet display tray. We were inside an upscale jewelry store, finalizing engagement rings. Mom was extremely enthusiastic, as if this were her own wedding. Dad was there too, silently approving everything with subtle nods. And me? I was just wondering why everything was moving at lightning speed. Mom, why the rush? I asked hesitantly. Son, once a decision is finalized, there's no sense in delaying, she said firmly. Harrison's family is ready too. Everything is proceeding smoothly. The engagement is this Saturday. Saturday. That meant 5 days away. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I discreetly checked it under the counter. A text from Harrison. We need to meet, alone. Riverside Park, 5 p.m. today. I made up some random excuse to my mother and left the store. Riverside Park was a 15-minute drive. When I arrived, Harrison was already sitting on a bench, wearing a casual gray Henley and dark jeans, holding a coffee cup, looking unexpectedly normal, human. This was the first time I'd seen him in anything other than formal attire. And strangely, he seemed even more approachable this way. Hey, I said cautiously, sitting down beside him. Hey, he extended another coffee cup toward me. Thought you might need this. Thanks. I took a sip, caramel macchiato, extra foam. Exactly how I liked it. Coincidence? Or had he actually remembered from dinner? Listen carefully, Harrison said in a serious tone, turning to face me directly. I know everything is fast-tracking, and I don't want to force you into anything. If you think this isn't the right decision, tell me now. I'll handle both families. I'll convince them to call it off. I looked into his hazel eyes. Honest, direct, genuinely offering me an escape route. This was my choice. My parents had never given me such an option. I need to be honest, I said slowly. My heart pounding. I lied to my parents. I'm not actually gay. I only said that to avoid being forced into marriage. But it backfired. Badly. Long silence. Harrison set down his coffee, leaned back, and then, surprisingly, let out a soft laugh. Not mocking. Almost amused. What? I asked defensively. That's quite the plot twist, he said with a slight smile. So you're completely straight? I think so, I admitted. I've never looked at any guy that way. Never felt anything. Harrison nodded thoughtfully, processing this information. All right, that still doesn't change my offer. If you don't want this arrangement, I'll help you escape it. But if you want to continue for whatever reason, I have no expectations from my side. We'll keep it practical, roommates with rings. But what about your parents? Mine. Society? They won't know anything, he said calmly. We'll act when necessary. The rest of the time we live separately. Independently. No obligations. Practical. Logical. Almost too perfect. And if, I said slowly, if I agree, then what happens later? Later, Harrison said, standing up and extending his hand. We both live our lives. No interference, no drama. Clean arrangement. I stared at his outstretched hand. This decision could define my entire future. But weirdly, this option didn't seem bad. Maybe because Harrison was genuine, honest, trustworthy even. I shook his hand. Deal. He completed the handshake with a firm grip, gave a slight nod and said, Good. Engagement is Saturday. Be mentally prepared for the circus. And as he walked away, I watched his retreating figure and a strange thought occurred to me. Maybe this arrangement wasn't as terrible as I'd initially believed. The next few days blurred together. My mother was in full wedding planner mode, calling caterers, confirming guest lists, coordinating with Harrison's family. I mostly stayed out of her way, showing up when required for fittings and tastings. Marcus cornered me at work on Thursday. Dude, you're getting engaged this weekend and you didn't tell me? It's complicated, I said. Complicated how? You meet someone, fall in love, get engaged. That's the normal sequence. We met through family. I explained vaguely. It's more traditional than romantic. He studied me carefully. Are you happy about this? Was I? Honestly, I didn't know. I'm accepting of it. That's not the same thing, Avery. I know, I admitted. But sometimes life doesn't give you perfect options. You just choose the least complicated path. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he dropped it. All right, but if you need anything, and I mean anything, I'm here. Thanks, man. That means a lot. Friday evening, Harrison texted me. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Try to get some sleep tonight. These events are exhausting. I smiled despite myself. Even his texts were practical and considerate. I did try to sleep, but my mind wouldn't cooperate. Tomorrow I'd be officially engaged to a man I'd met less than 2 weeks ago. A man who knew I wasn't actually gay. A man who was offering me a convenient escape from family pressure with no strings attached. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like the most honest arrangement I'd ever been part of. Saturday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine. The kind of perfect weather that seemed designed for celebrations. I showered, dressed in the outfit my mother had selected, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. This is really happening, I whispered to myself. My phone buzzed. Another text from Harrison. On my way. See you soon. Simple, direct, yet somehow reassuring. Elena found me in the preparation room. You look terrified, she observed. I am terrified, I admitted. Wanna run? I can create a distraction. I smiled at her offer. No, I'm going through with this. Then at least try to smile, she said. You look like you're attending a funeral, not your own engagement. She had a point. I practiced smiling in the mirror until it looked somewhat natural. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Harrison arrived looking impeccable in a black tuxedo. We exchanged rings, simple platinum bands that felt heavier than they looked. Guests applauded enthusiastically. Cameras flashed from every angle. Through it all, Harrison remained calm and composed, giving me subtle, reassuring looks when the attention became overwhelming. During the reception, we managed to steal a brief moment alone in a side lounge. "How are you holding up?" Harrison asked quietly. "Surviving," I said. "Good." He handed me a glass of water. Again surprisingly considerate. "Remember, this is all theater. Tomorrow real life begins. No audience, real life. Meaning a shared apartment. Daily proximity. Living with someone I barely knew." "Harrison," I said hesitantly, "if you ever have any issues with me, I'll tell you directly," he interrupted, "and I expect the same from you. Open communication. No passive aggression." Agreed, agreed. This arrangement was practical. Almost clinical. But some tiny flicker stirred in my chest, though I couldn't quite identify what it was. Later that night, after all the guests had left, we found ourselves in the hotel suite, complete with candles, rose petals, and romantic lighting. Harrison glanced around and said dryly, "Subtle." "Not at all," I agreed, laughing slightly. He loosened his tie and gestured toward the couch. "I'll sleep here, you take the bed." "That's not fair. I'll take the couch." "Avery," he said firmly, "I've slept in worse places during site inspections. The bed is yours. Non-negotiable." I recognized that tone arguing would be pointless. "Fine. Thanks." The lights went off. We settled into our separate spaces, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay there thinking about Harrison, about this arrangement, about that unexplainable feeling slowly building inside me. This was just a practical arrangement. So why did it feel like something more was waiting to unfold? 1 week after the engagement, we moved into a modern downtown apartment. Neutral territory, belonging to neither of us. The two-bedroom setup was spacious and minimalist, clearly reflecting Harrison's design sensibility. He'd systematically organized everything. Shared spaces, private areas, even a detailed schedule chart posted on the refrigerator. "Morning kitchen duty is yours," he explained, pointing at the chart. "I'll handle evenings. Cleaning duties alternate weekly. Groceries split down the middle. Simple system. This looks like a corporate standard operating procedure." I joked lightly. "Because clarity prevents conflicts," he said seriously. But then, barely noticeable, a slight smile appeared. "But it works. Trust the process." The first few days were awkward. We mostly stayed in our separate rooms, keeping interactions minimal. Breakfast and dinner were usually silent affairs. But slowly, organically, small conversations began happening. "Your coffee obsession is becoming problematic," Harrison commented one morning when he spotted my third cup. "And your black coffee preference is borderline psychopathic," I countered. He paused for a second, then unexpectedly chuckled, soft, genuine. Fair assessment. That small laugh was strangely significant to me. For the first time, I realized Harrison wasn't just robotic and guarded. There was a real person inside, with humor, with warmth. One Friday night, I came home late because of a project deadline, completely exhausted. Harrison was working on his laptop in the living room, focused in the dim light. When I entered, he glanced over casually. "Late shift?" "Yeah. Presentation tomorrow." I dropped my bag. "Did you eat?" "No. Didn't have time." Without saying anything, he went to the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returned with a plate stir-fried noodles with vegetables, fresh and properly plated. "You made this for me?" I asked, surprised. "Used up the leftovers efficiently," he said nonchalantly, extending the plate. "Eat. Sleeping on an empty stomach is unhealthy." I was genuinely touched. This cold, practical Harrison had, without any expectation, made dinner for me. "Thank you, Harrison. Really." He simply nodded and returned to his work, as if it were no big deal. But for me, it was huge. That night, lying in bed, I kept thinking about that gesture. Maybe this arrangement wasn't as transactional as we'd planned. The next morning, when I was in the kitchen making my usual sweet coffee, Harrison joined me. He made his signature black coffee, but then, unexpectedly, he prepared a cup for me too. Exactly my style. Caramel, extra foam, slight cinnamon. "This is for you," he said casually, sliding the cup toward me. I looked into his hazel eyes, still guarded but softer. "You remembered how I like it?" Basic observation skills. He deflected, but there was a hint of something care attention in his tone. "Thanks," I said sincerely. We took our coffees to the balcony. The morning sunlight was soft, the city slowly waking up below us. A comfortable silence existed between us. No pressure, no awkwardness. Harrison said suddenly, looking at the skyline, this arrangement, it's working better than expected. Yeah, I agreed. Maybe the practical approach wasn't so bad after all. He looked at me with a slight smile, rare, genuine. Maybe not. And in that moment, something shifted. This was no longer just cohabitation. Something else was building, subtle, slow, but undeniable. The following weeks passed smoothly. We settled into a comfortable routine, shared meals, casual conversations, even occasional movie nights. Harrison showed me his architecture projects. I explained my marketing campaigns to him. We were learning about each other naturally, without force. One evening we sat on the couch watching a thriller movie. The popcorn bowl rested between us. We developed a comfortable proximity over the weeks. Mid-scene, my hand accidentally brushed against his when we both reached for popcorn simultaneously. It felt like an electric current. I quickly withdrew my hand. Sorry. It's fine, Harrison said calmly. But I noticed his neck had turned slightly red, barely visible in the dim light. But I caught it. The movie ended. Credits rolled. Neither of us moved from the couch. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged with something unspoken, something growing between us that neither had acknowledged yet. Harrison shifted slightly, turning toward me. Can I ask you something personal? Sure, I said, curious. Do you ever regret this? The arrangement, I mean. Sometimes I wonder if I made your life more complicated instead of simpler. I considered his question carefully. Honestly, at first, yes. I thought I'd made the worst decision possible. But now, I paused, searching for the right words. Now I think it might have been one of the better accidents of my life. He smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Accidents can be fortunate sometimes. Yeah, I agreed softly. They really can. We sat there in the darkness, the only light coming from the muted TV screen showing scrolling credits. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sounds of the city outside. You know what's strange? I said after a while. I feel more myself around you than I do with people I've known for years. Harrison looked at me intently. Why do you think that is? Because you don't expect me to be anything other than what I am. I answered honestly. There's no performance required. No pretending. That goes both ways, he said quietly. I haven't felt this comfortable with anyone in a long time. The air between us felt different now. Heavier, more significant. We were crossing some invisible line, moving from practical roommates into something undefined but real. Harrison, I began, not quite sure what I wanted to say. Yeah? I'm glad we're doing this. Whatever this is. He reached over and gently squeezed my shoulder, a simple gesture, but loaded with meaning. Me too, Avery. Me too. We stayed up talking until nearly 2 in the morning, discussing everything from childhood memories to future dreams. It was the most honest conversation I'd had with anyone in years. When we finally said goodnight and retreated to our separate rooms, I lay awake thinking about how drastically my life had changed in just a few weeks. I'd entered this arrangement as a survival strategy, a way to appease my family while maintaining my independence. But somewhere along the way it had transformed into something else entirely. Harrison had become more than just a convenient solution. He'd become someone I genuinely cared about, someone whose presence I valued, someone I looked forward to seeing every day. Was this friendship? Something more? I wasn't sure yet, but whatever it was, it felt right in a way nothing else in my carefully planned life ever had. And that realization, more than anything else, kept me awake long into the night. Not with anxiety but with a strange, hopeful anticipation for whatever might come next. 3 weeks into our living arrangement, I woke up to find Harrison already in the kitchen, making pancakes from scratch. "Since when do you cook breakfast?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "Since I discovered we have a waffle maker we've never used," he replied, flipping a perfectly golden pancake. Seemed wasteful. I poured myself coffee and watched him work. There was something mesmerizing about his focused precision, the same attention to detail he brought to his architecture designs, now applied to breakfast. "You're staring," he observed without looking up, "just appreciating the domesticity." I said quickly. It's unexpected. He plated the pancakes and slid them across the counter to me. People contain multitudes. You're learning mine. And you're learning mine, I countered, cutting into the stack. They were delicious. Light, fluffy, perfectly cooked. These are amazing, by the way. Thanks. He made his own plate and joined me at the counter. So, my parents want to have dinner with us tomorrow night. Both our families, actually. Kind of a post-engagement celebration. My fork stopped midway to my mouth. Tomorrow? That's short notice. I know. I can make an excuse if you're not ready. No, I said, surprising myself. It's fine. We should probably maintain appearances anyway. Right? Appearances. Something in his tone made me look up, but his expression was neutral as always. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant. Private room, elaborate menu, both sets of parents clearly enjoying the union they'd orchestrated. Harrison and I played our parts perfectly, polite, attentive to each other, answering questions about our future plans with well-rehearsed vagueness. You two seem very compatible, Harrison's mother observed, smiling warmly. I can see genuine affection developing. I felt Harrison's hand find mine under the table, a convincing detail for our audience. But his thumb traced a small circle on my palm and I realized it wasn't entirely for show. My heart rate picked up. We're getting to know each other better every day, Harrison said smoothly. It's been a pleasant surprise. More than pleasant. I added and meant it. After dinner, as we walked to the car, Harrison was quieter than usual. You okay? I asked. Yeah, just thinking. About. He unlocked the car but didn't get in immediately. About how easy it's becoming. The pretending, I mean. Sometimes I forget we're acting. Me too, I admitted softly. We drove home in contemplative silence, the city lights blurring past the windows. When we arrived at the apartment, neither of us moved to get out right away. Avery, Harrison began, then stopped. What? Nothing. Forget it. Harrison, we agreed on open communication. Remember? He turned to face me in the dim parking garage lighting. I know what we agreed. That's the problem. I don't understand. We agreed this would be purely practical. No complications. But I'm starting to feel complicated about it. About you. My breath caught. Complicated how? He ran a hand through his hair, the first genuinely nervous gesture I'd ever seen from him. Like I look forward to coming home because you're there. Like I make coffee the way you prefer it because seeing you smile first thing in the morning matters to me. Like holding your hand at dinner felt more natural than breathing. The confession hung between us in the darkness of the car. My mind raced, trying to process what he was saying, what it meant, what I felt in return. I know you're straight, Harrison continued quickly. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I'm not asking you to reciprocate or change anything. I just needed to be honest because keeping it inside was becoming impossible. Harrison, it's okay, he interrupted. We can still make the arrangement work. I won't make things weird. I promise. Would you shut up for a second? I said, more sharply than intended. He looked startled. I don't know what I am, I said slowly, working through my thoughts out loud. I've always assumed I was straight because that's what made sense, what was expected. But these past weeks with you have been different. Good different. Confusing different. What are you saying? I'm saying I think about you too. More than I probably should. I'm saying that when I'm at work, I'm counting down hours until I can come home. I'm saying that when you made me dinner that night, something shifted in how I see you. See, Harrison's eyes searched mine in the darkness. So what does that mean? Honestly, I have no idea, I admitted. This is all new territory for me. But I know I don't want to go back to how things were before. I don't want this to be just an arrangement anymore. What do you want it to be? Something real, I said. Can we try that? Take whatever this is and see where it goes? No pressure, no expectations, just honest exploration. A slow smile spread across Harrison's face, the most unguarded expression I'd ever seen from him. Yeah, I'd like that. Good. I smiled back. So what now? Now, he said, we go inside, probably stay up too late talking and figure this out together, one day at a time. We got out of the car and walked to the apartment. And for the first time, Harrison's hand found mine without an audience to perform for. It felt different than it had at dinner. More tentative, more honest, more significant. Inside the apartment, we settled on the couch with mugs of tea. I should probably tell you something, I said. I've never done this before, been with a guy. I mean, I don't really know how this works. Neither have I. Technically, Harrison admitted. Not seriously, anyway. I've dated but nothing that ever felt like this. So we're both figuring it out, apparently. He shifted closer. Is this okay? Yeah, I said, my heart racing. This is okay. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing gently across my skin. Can I kiss you? Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft, questioning, nothing like the dramatic first kisses in movies. It was uncertain and sweet and absolutely perfect. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling like idiots. Well, Harrison said, slightly breathless. That was, yeah, I agreed. It really was. We spent the rest of the night on that couch, talking and occasionally kissing, learning this new language between us. By the time exhaustion finally claimed us, I'd fallen asleep with my head on Harrison's shoulder, his arm around me, both of us more content than we'd been in years. What started as a desperate lie had somehow transformed into the most honest thing in my life, and I couldn't wait to see where it would lead us next. The next morning, I woke up still on the couch, covered with a blanket Harrison must have draped over me. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Harrison appeared with 2 mugs. One black, one perfectly sweetened. Morning, he said, handing me my cup. Morning. I accepted the coffee and the kiss he pressed to my forehead. So, he said, settling beside me, about last night. No regrets, I said firmly. You? None whatsoever. We sat there in comfortable silence, drinking our coffee, beginning this new chapter of whatever we were becoming. My mother had once told me that life was unpredictable. She'd been right. I never imagined a desperate lie would lead me to someone so unexpectedly right. But here I was, with Harrison beside me, genuinely happy for perhaps the first time in my adult life. And this was the best mistake I'd ever made.